I had a number of professors who had Catholic sympathies in college. And one was a history professor that got me to appreciate the fact that on the eve of the Reformation, even though there was corruption in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church, there were also positive developments. There was growth, and there were missionary efforts. There were new religious orders being founded. There were older religious orders that were doing missionary work. The church was sponsoring the arts and was founding universities and hospitals and caring for the poor. And so even at the same time that there were things happening that shouldn't have been happening, it wasn't all bad. It was a sort of mixed picture. And that got me to think about, maybe there's more than just a purely human element at work in church history. So that was sort of one piece, was sort of the church history piece and the common objection of, well, how could you take seriously the idea of papal authority when you've got all these Renaissance popes embezzling or living it up and corruption in the hierarchy. I had an English professor who, through literature, continually brought up the idea of a sacramental worldview and understanding God's grace as being mediated through very specific physical means, and just making that a sort of logical extension of the idea of the incarnation. God could have saved us any way he wanted, but he saved us by coming into the world as a newborn baby and being incarnate as a living, breathing human being. And even beyond that, he didn't just speak words of healing to people. He spat in the mud and rubbed mud on a blind man's eyes to make him see. So even the specific examples of healing and ministry that our Lord had on earth were sometimes shockingly incarnational and bodily, touching people and mud on their eyes and things like that. And so this English professor really drilled home the idea that God's grace is not some purely immaterial thing, that it often comes to us in very specific, very concrete, very physical ways. Sometimes it comes through other people, and sometimes it comes, it could come through, sacraments, and that the whole world, nature, the created order, can be a means of grace. And so getting that sort of opened up a whole new way of understanding grace for me. And so that was a piece of a Catholic sympathy. I had a friend and sort of mentor back at my home church who thought we should have kept marriage as a sacrament, even in the Methodist tradition, kind of lamented the fact that we lost that sense of marriage as a sacrament. And so one by one, these kind of put together pieces of the puzzle for me. I through courses in French history and culture, I was exposed to the idea that you had feast days and you could celebrate your name day. And so I really got into, in college, I got my hands on a copy of a dictionary of the saints or an encyclopedia of the saints. And I would put a Post-it note on my dorm room door every day. I missed some days, but I tried every day to find a saint for that day and read just a paragraph or two in this little dictionary about that saint and post the saint's name on my dorm room door. And then inevitably I'd have somebody in my dorm hall would come up and say, "Hey, who's Saint Rose of Lima?" I'd say, "Oh, let me tell you about her. I just read about her. She did this, that, and the other thing." And they go, "Oh, that's really cool. Never heard of her." And then, I got introduced to saints that way. And I introduced some of the people on my dorm hall to saints that way. And it was just sort of a fun thing that grew out of this recognition of saints' feast days being celebrated in a Catholic country like France, and realizing there are so many Christians down through the centuries that we can learn from, who did really amazing things and who are examples of God's grace at work in their life, founding religious orders, doing charitable work, teaching, miracles attributed to them, and just sort of growing awareness that can be part of the story of what God has done and is doing in the world. I definitely think that the appeal of the lives of the saints and the fact that people can be attracted to different elements of Catholicism, it points to the universality of it, that it is really Catholic. It's universal. It's universal through time and it's universal through space. And sometimes in my own life, I found that there were things I appreciated about Christianity that I didn't realize were Catholic until I started learning about the Catholic Church, and I thought, oh, you know, that's why we do that thing, and that's why we do this other thing, because we got it from the Catholics. And even after becoming Catholic, whenever I went back and visited my parents' Methodist church, I could point to probably 20 different things about the layout of the sanctuary. Like, oh, there's a reason why they have this communion rail. They call it an altar rail, but it's for kneeling at for communion, which I knew because we sometimes celebrate communion kneeling that way. But I thought they got it from the Catholics. And why is there a step up onto the platform where the communion table is? You know, if I had asked somebody in that Methodist church, I'm not sure anybody could have told me why there was a step up. But I thought, that's the altar area. That's the sanctuary in Catholic terms. And the altar railing is to sort of symbolize that this is a set apart space. You know, why are there two candles on the communion table? You know, where's this IHS symbol coming from? You know, so many of these elements that I didn't even think about as a United Methodist. But as I became Catholic, I thought, oh, we got that from the Catholics. We got that from the Catholics. We got that from the Catholics. I think it's just one more example of how so much about our culture, so much about our Christian culture, so much about Protestant expressions of Christianity can be traced back to the Catholic Church.